So what gets in the way? I mentioned already that it seems to be very obvious to people, and therefore I think it's important we think about what is actually getting in the way when we try and do it. I'm going to talk about three things very briefly. There's other things as well, and there's particular things, I guess, from a policing and public management context, which we'll talk a bit about at the end. I'm going to talk about three very general ones. The first thing is cognitive biases, the way we think, or some of the constraints on the way we think, the way we look at the world. The second thing is management fads and fashions. Now, I know there's some people from policing, some people from other areas here. You might also start thinking about your own context. Can you see things like practices, ways of managing, ways of doing the work that seem to be fads and fashions that drive a lot of behaviour, and then they kind of disappear and go away again to be replaced by something else that appears new or isn't new or whatever. So fads and fashions. The third thing is power and politics. So I'm going to talk about these briefly. Okay, now, I just want to look at it and tell me what you think the right answer is. Give you, like, I don't know, 20 seconds. Yeah, the right answer is 5 pence. Now, this is just an example. There's lots of them. It comes from a book, well, not just a book, but from Kahneman's work on cognitive biases and cognitive process, and this book is called Thinking Fast and Slow. There's lots of examples in here. And this is a kind of cognitive bias or a framing effect. And what's happening is you're looking at saying bat and ball, £1 10 pence. The bat costs £1 more than the ball. Because you've already seen bat, ball, £1 10 pence, the thing that really wants to come out is 10 pence. And if it's reassuring to you, if you show this to people, irrespective of educational level, about 70 people give the answer 10 pence. Okay, 70% of people give the answer 10 pence. So if you did, don't feel bad about it. It's fine, you know. We all kind of are led astray by these things. And also, what's interesting, if you give it to people and ask them if they're confident about the answer, not in a trick question situation, they're often extremely confident as well. So if there's anything you take away from it, just because you think you're right doesn't mean you are. How confident you are and how right you are, different things, completely different things. So this is just an example of one. Here's another one. So yeah, the correct answer is 47, but some people say 24. And again, it's a heuristic, it's a sort of shortcut. You see 48, you see half, and you go, okay, I'll just half 48 gets 24. And the way of doing this, and the way of doing the previous one, is to actually almost unpack the information in it from the way it's worded. So if you just take away the information, if you reworded that, you get it in a second, it wouldn't be a problem. But it's the way it's phrased, it's the way it's framed that pushes in a direction. Now, this is slightly more complicated, so I'm going to give you about a minute to do this one. Whoops. It's a very basic principle, and this is a very embarrassing thing to admit. When I first saw this, and I'm kind of supposed to know about statistics, or do I? Yeah, I do know about statistics, but I kind of got it wrong as well. And it's a very, very basic probability and sampling thing. So if you've got 50-50, so let's say Daniel is going to toss a coin, is going to do it 10 times and do that 10 times, so 10 times 10, and Bill's going to toss a coin 1,000,000 times and do that 10 times. Who's more likely to get 80% heads? Yeah. And so I pushed it to extremes. And it's very unlikely. If you toss a coin 1,000,000 times, you're going to get 80% heads. If you toss a coin twice, or 3 times, or 4 times, it's quite likely you're going to get 60, 70, 80%. And it's quite interesting because, again, anybody who manages or looks at data and makes decisions in organisations, this is a really basic thing we should all know about, isn't it? Like about probability, just about sampling and stuff, which I'm supposed to know, and I kind of know now, of course, because but it's that kind of, again, it's another example of the way in which information is presented, and basic understanding about distributions and stuff can kind of get in the way of us processing stuff. And there's lots of other biases, confirmation bias, where we interpret stuff, consistent with our beliefs. Another one is hindsight bias. I knew that was going to happen. To which you always say, well, if you knew it was going to happen, why didn't you tell us at the time? I knew it was going to happen. Things like anchoring effect. So allegedly in restaurants, so if you look at a wine list, often have very, very expensive bottles in the kind of last 20% of the list, and it's not. And if you do that, you'll sell more wine. It's simply not because you'll sell those bottles. It's because people might move down the list and go, okay, we start at £10, we end at 100. I'm not going to be a cheapskate. I'm not going to spend £100, so I'm going to go a certain way down. And you just spend more money. So you place a lot of emphasis on one piece of information. Another one is a framing effect. Of course, it's a bit like one of those things that if you see a ready meal that says 85% fat-free, that sounds quite good. If it says 15% fat, You imagine this little packet, oh, disgusting. So it's the same information, it's just the way it's presented. And also very important bias is a metacognitive bias, is the belief we don't have biases. We can think absolutely clearly the whole time, just show me the information, I will just understand it. Of course, we know that's another bias in itself. So the idea that evidence-based practice approaches can maybe help because it's about the conscientious, explicit, judicious use of different kinds of information. So maybe this could help to overcome some of these biases.